So it's day 6. I'm back to writing in the morning. First thing I do before I start working on my other stuff. And today I spent about 45 minutes, I think, writing the end of my book. And this was spurred, I'm still in the process of outlining the overall story and to kind of figure out who my main characters are and what their backstory is. And when I was thinking about the ending, one thing came to mind, and that is I want the ending, like the final confrontation, right? There always have to be this big battle, whatever it is. But I want that to be more than just a run-of-the-mill confrontation. I want it to be a personal ending as well. So it has to do something to my main characters. Now, I've explained in previous videos that the core of my story, the heart of my story, is a power trio of 3 characters. Tim, who is the main protagonist, and then we've got Alara, who is a young nun, and then there is this mysterious angel, Ethan, who actually has a dark past that he keeps hidden. Alara also, I think, has deeper layers. There is something about her behavior that makes us kind of understand that there is more under the surface. But Tim doesn't know that. And Tim has also a troubled past, obviously. You need to have some depth in his motivations too. But he also has a fear of being alone, a fear of not being good enough. And so that's why these 3 friends team up and they complement each other. So when I was thinking of what is going to be the ending, of course it's going to be this big battle, but what is at stake? It's not just that they save the world, but it's also saving their relationship. What if at one point towards the end, everything falls apart? So these 3 really need each other and they've learned to appreciate one another, but they've also each withheld their deepest secrets. And what if the group falls apart? What if there are, again, I'm using that question, what if, a lot in this phase of working on my novel, and it's like figuring out what could happen and what would make the story interesting. So what if this fallen angel, because that's what Ethan is, he's actually a fallen angel who pretends to be a good angel. What if the other side, the sectarian, like evil mages, actually are assisted by fallen spirits? What if there is some supernatural influence there, and these fallen spirits, these fallen angels, are going to expose Ethan, and that drives Ethan away from his newfound friends? But what if that's not the only one who breaks the bond? What if Alara has a troubled past that makes her vulnerable to the reasoning of the evil sect? I think I came up with a temporary name, or maybe even a definitive name. I want to call the sect the Infelix, Infelix or Infelix. Felix is happy or happiness in Latin, and Infelix is the opposite. It's like the unhappy ones. And so that kind of matches, I think, what what they want is to make the world unhappier, reasoning that will make people strong and more, motivate them to get more agency. That is a very, very tempting kind of way of thinking for Alara, who, let's say that she has entered a monastery, maybe out of religious motives, certainly, but maybe also as a way to escape her abusive family. What if, as a child, she was humiliated? I don't know exactly, but lots of stuff happened to her, and she's very damaged by that. And so the monastery became a dream of, this might be a place where I'm finally safe, where I can be myself. And instead, the monastery that she entered turned out to be almost like a repetition of an abusive situation, because there were superiors who were like power hungry, and the young nuns are constantly humiliated and talked down to. So what if, for Alara, this whole adventure, again, at first, feels like an escape? Like this is a way for me to get away from this new abusive situation. And finally have a role, finally have agency over my life. But what if she discovers that this sect of infelics actually have a kind of almost a spirituality that could finally help her solve her biggest flaw, and that is like she is projecting to be very strong and very strict with herself, but it's also to mask her insecurities. For instance, she would always talk about her family and about her past as being like super happy and everything is fine, because first of all, she kind of doesn't want to acknowledge what has happened to her, but also because she doesn't want people to talk about her family. She doesn't want the subject to come up. So it's better to pretend that everything was hunky-dory, but it wasn't. And so what if finally in this antagonist, she finds someone who's like her, who shares with her, like he must be super charming, of course, and very good looking. And so for this young woman, it seems like, why is he an antagonist? He's actually, maybe he's a good guy. And then he shares with her his own troubled past and why he entered the infelics and how the infelics sect helped him to solve the biggest problem in his life, which was to feel vulnerable and to feel powerless. And then when she's listening to him, she's like, you are me. We have so much in common. And that's when she starts to be lured into this kind of mentality of the infelics, and that drives her away from Timothy. And Timothy is a good guy, and he wants to help, but at the same time, he feels so powerless and so weak and so inexperienced. And so he's not the strong man that Elara actually thinks she needs in her life. And so at one point, right before the final battle, Elara reveals to Tim that she's joining the infelics. And Tim is like, what? I've lost Ethan, I've lost Elara, I've lost all my friends, I'm all alone now. And so what do I cannot solve this. It's the end. So it kind of like brings the story to a culmination where you think that we're back at zero, at the start. And that's where he has to dig very, very deep and come up with his courage. And I think at one point he needs to discover what the true story is of Elara and Ethan, what they've been hiding for him. And once he understands it, it doesn't make him angry. He's angry that he feels that they betrayed him and they walked away, and he mourns the loss of their friendship. But now that he discovers what truly was going on, and he wasn't aware of all the pain that they were carrying around, he all of a sudden feels like, I need to save them. I need to gain them back. And that is when the final confrontation happens. There's this big battle. I have no idea what that is going to look like. But I do know that once he wins that battle, or they win, of course, they come together again, and then they fight together. And that maybe even the antagonist will also join them. Who knows? That could be fun. So we have a little redemption story there. And then what they actually find is not just like the book, the magical book that had been stolen, but they also, and much more important, they find the friendship, they find each other back, and that's the ending. So once I set that up, I was like, okay, I need to think back. How is this going to lead to that? And how can I set up, like where, for instance, do Tim and Elara meet? Because they're in a monastery. It's not a mixed monastery. He's in one abbey and then she's in another one. And so how could they ever meet beforehand? And how can I integrate that in the story? Because I don't want to do flashbacks. I don't want to do like, we go back in time and then we see them in their childhood. That's such a trope. I kind of want to avoid that. And I was thinking, well, maybe they meet at a religious event. And that got me thinking, oh, I know what. They're going to meet on a pilgrimage. Okay, so that makes sense that as a brother and a sister in a religious order, they go to join this pilgrimage. What pilgrimage? What is it going to be about? How can that tie into my story? And then I'm thinking, oh, what if it's related to the book that was stolen? What if that book was actually a very important liturgical thing that would be carried to a special place, and then once a year they would read from this book. And that would give everyone who came there together an almost religious experience, like it gave them a super boost of confidence, of warmth. So it has to take place. What if it takes place in the winter? What if it is the magical equivalent of the Nativity, right? The Word became flesh. What if the Word, the book, is kind of how they celebrate the winter solstice, and they read from the book, and then everybody gets sucked into this magical trance, the story trance, where everything goes on hiatus, and that's where they experience like an incredible source of love. And I don't know, I'll come up with something. But anyway, what if that is like this is why the book is so important. And then what if there is a second moment during the year, so it's a biannual event, like for instance Easter, an Easter type of thing, where they will, and that's so that's going to take place in the springtime, and then the book is read again, and that is what gives not the people power, but the land. What if that event is super necessary to revitalize the crops, and so the flowers, the trees, the whatever, the apple trees, they will only bear fruit if this story ritual is done in Lent. So two pilgrimages. So we meet, Elara and Tim meet during that first very powerful winter solstice pilgrimage around the book. This is how I can establish why the book is so magical and why it's so important. Then the book gets stolen, and then the story has a ticking time, a ticking clock, which is very, very good to propel the story and to keep us like on the edge of our seats. Are they going to make it? So the book has to be back before the springtime event or the springtime pilgrimage. And there's a lot at stake, because if the book is not read, then nothing will bear fruit. The fields will be barren, and people will starve. So everything is at stake, and they need the book to bring that magic to the land, to revitalize the land. So there's a lot of Easter symbolism kind of implied there. So how does the book get its magical powers? Why is it so powerful? And this got me another idea. What if the monastery where Tim is has a secret floor? And there are like high-level monks who every morning after morning prayer, they go up the stairs and they disappear on this floor where no one else can come. And actually, not even the head of the monastery actually really knows what happens there. It's even forbidden for him. These monks, these high-level monks, are actually from another monastery. We don't know much about them. They're kind of mysterious. And what they do is hidden, is secret. But what if we know, or at least I know as a writer, that what they're doing actually is these are not regular monks. These monks have been trained in a hidden abbey where our protagonists will ultimately end up as well. And that is where they have been formed as story mages. This is where they have learned how to tell stories that enchant the world, but it's all for the good, right? It's good magic. So this is an art, and what they do on that secret floor is they add pages to the book. It's like the Book of Kells. Like they spend time in prayer, and they write stories, magical stories. They add illustrations and whatnot, and that whole thing is like a magical ritual that imbibes, how do you say that fills the book with this magical power. So what is the magic? It's literally the magic of centuries of storytelling that these monks over the centuries have added to the book. That's why it's so powerful, and that's why it's also so precious, because it's kind of the depository of all those magical stories. And so why do the bad guys want to have that book? It's because if they can somehow harness the power of that book, or maybe even destroy it, or kind of like burn pages, and that gives them mana or power or whatever to do their evil work and to destroy stories, or at least to destroy the hope in stories. What if so the book is in peril, and the bad guys are going to destroy it. That's why they need to salvage it. And so that sets up, I think, an interesting premise for our heroes they ultimately want to go to this like hidden abbey so they can actually learn how to kind of like harness these magical powers and heal undo the damage that the bad guys have done. So this is another element. And then I'm thinking, okay, I can raise the stakes of the what is it, the inciting incident. What if not only the bad guys are like stealing the book, but they're also killing all these monks, these high-level monks? What if when Timothy enters the floor and discovers what has happened, he sees like all the corpses of these monks that have been killed, and he doesn't know, right? He doesn't know that they are actually the story mages, and so all the story mages have been killed. And that gives me the title for the book, or at least like a temporary title. Because what if, now that all the story mages are dead, the book itself can no longer grow? So we need a new generation of story mages. And of course, you can see where this is going. Tim and Alara are going to be the first of a next generation of story mages. So the dawn of the story mages, obviously this is talking about the new generation. Of the dawn is basically what we see at the end, where Tim and Alara will literally be the dawn of the new generation of story mages.